Good morning. Welcome to a new episode of Lotto Rincon podcast. Today we have a guest, Star Darby, a coach with an impressive career in football, especially in Asia. Here we won leagues in Singapore, Thailand. He did very well with the Laos team and the Vietnam women team, and he's just to be appointed as ambassador of the Marshall Islands. It's my first live episode in English, so we'll see how everything turns out. Welcome, Mr. Darby.
It's great to be speaking to someone from Venezuela. I always liked the Venezuelan football team's nickname, Vino Tinto, red wine. What a fantastic name for a football team. And obviously, I've heard of good players such as Rondon, who play for Everton, and Rincon, who plays in Serie A. So, Venezuelan football is is well known to me. I speak a few languages, but I'm afraid Spanish is not one. I signed three Chilean players in when I was in Perak in Malaysia, and obviously they spoke Spanish. So only words I knew were would not be allowed to be on your podcast. All the bad words as usual.
Your time, and we begin this talk asking, how are you beginning as a player?
I was lucky enough to be born in Liverpool. Very close, about 4 streets away, 1 kilometre from Anfield Stadium. So I was brought up with football, like I'm sure Venezuelan kids playing football every day. Uh, I played for Liverpool school. And then I went to a club called Tranmere Rovers. Then I was never a great player, so I moved on to playing in the USA, in Australia, and in Bahrain. Uh, and then I moved into coaching.
I understand. How did the opportunity to go to Australia arise?
I've been working in Bahrain as a player coach, and then I went on an English FA coaching course. While I was on that course, it was called the English full badge, like the A license. Um, a scout from a team in Tasmania asked me to come over to play and to coach in Australia. Uh, Only a 1 year contract, but it ended up staying there 17 years. I played and coached in Tasmania, then Canberra, and then finally in the National League in Sydney for a team called Sydney Olympic, and also worked for the National FA as a technical director. So wonderful country. Uh, the only reason I left Australia was that there was far more money in Asia, so I had to take the opportunity in football, as maybe Venezuelan players do, have to move to where the bigger contracts are.
In Johor, he had a short but very full stage. Then you will go to the women team of Vietnam, with which you win a gold medal at the Asian Games. What do you remember the most?
I originally went to coach the men's Olympic team in Vietnam, but for, I'll say, political reasons, they changed me to the women's team because they felt they had a better chance of winning a gold medal. And that was politically very important to the Vietnamese. We did. Uh, and I'll be honest, the players were magnificent. They were professional, they were dedicated, and they gave absolutely everything to win for their country. It was a pleasure to work with them. So many good stories about these players.
The time has to come to the Singapore League, as was then had the Ham United. What prospect do you have the Sydney, and do you have notion that what will finally find?
I was working at Sheffield Wednesday in England as the youth team coach when I got a phone call from Singapore offering me the job as head coach of Home United. Basically, they were offering me 4 times my English salary. Plus, I was working 80 hours a week in England, and this job, it was just a morning in a sense, probably like a normal professional job, whereas the academy job in Sheffield Wednesday was 70, 80 hours every week. So I took it. for obvious reasons. And it turned out to be an excellent choice because it was a superbly ran club. All the administrators were trained professionals, usually policemen, because it was belonged to the police department, the team, but they were superb in what they did. And they showed me that if you have a well-ran club off the pitch, it's so much easier to have, make it on the pitch. The manager of the club, the CEO, said to me, "Look, you're CEO on the pitch. I'm CEO off the pitch," and it worked perfectly for 3 years until the chairman changed, and then it all went badly again, because that shows you what leadership is so important. But whilst there, though, we won the cup twice, won the league, won the double, and got to the AFC Cup semi-final, the furthest any Singapore team had ever come. So in many ways, it was a great club, and I really enjoyed working there.
Tell us about your time in Perak. Was good performance led you to the national team?
We'd beaten Perak in the AFC Cup, and I'd spoken to Perak officials at the time. They'd approached me, but I believed in being loyal to contracts, so I kept my contract until it concluded at Home United. Then took up their offer, and I had 3 years there. Strange club. Some of the crowds, we reached 100,000 for one game for the Super League Cup final, which we won. I had imports from Burkina Faso, from Guinea, from Croatia, but it was a great club. The players were superb. Mixture of about 5 different religions, 6 different nationalities, but never a problem on the pitch. It was really good. Chaos at times because Malaysia was a bit like that. But then in the third year, I signed 3 Chilean players, 3 South Americans, Carlos Alberto Querez, Jorge Munoz, who are both good players, and they did really well. But the main player for me was Mario Beros Jara. He was a superb professional and showed what a good foreign player should be. He came with his wife. They joined the society. They mixed with local players. They both learned English rather than just spoke in Spanish like the other lads did, and they really became part of the culture. And that showed me what a good professional he was. Obviously, a great player as well. He played for the Chilean youth team, but as a person, they were superb, both him and his wife, and they showed you how good professionals should be. We did well there 3 years, and again, once the only problem we had, the reason I left, is the government ran this club, and the government changed hands, and then they stopped paying us. So basically, all the foreign players left, and the foreign coach left. Sadly, the locals had to stay, but they never got paid. So it's one of the sad realities of Asian football. There are times where the players don't get paid, and you have to fight for your money.
How is life in Thailand?
Thailand was a great place to work for many reasons. Firstly, obviously, it's a national team, so you got to work with the elite players, and we played all over Asia, Jordan, India, all the places you'd like to travel and play. But the biggest pleasure was working with 2 top-class professionals, Peter Reid and Brian Robson, who obviously famous England internationals, but excellent coaches as well, but also good people off the pitch. And I've found that wherever I've gone, that the best players and the best coaches are good people as well. So I think it's very important to remember that. I've seen some arrogant people, but they're never quite the best. The best are usually pretty good people.
You were in the inaugural season of the Indian Super League on the Mumbai City coaching staff. How did you experience the phenomenon? Is mascot before and after in football in the country?
I'd coached India a few years before the ISL, the Indian Super League, and it wasn't very happy. It was a big club, Mohun Bagan, and we had crowds of 110,000 for the big games. But it was a poor club internally. There was lots of turmoil, political problems. The caste system was so. After 3 months, I left. I just had enough. It's the first time I'd ever walked out on a job. I wasn't enjoying the football. I wasn't enjoying the environment. There was like a culture of fear throughout the club. So when I went to Mumbai, that was in a new league, ISL, the Indian Super League, and that was different. It was run by professional people with professional staff, very, very well organized. And of course, we had some good players. The best, of course, was working with Nicholas Anelka, who was probably the best player I've ever worked with. Um, Again, here, this is where the image is different to the reality. The image of him is that he's troublemaking, he's your problem, but he wasn't. He was the exact opposite. He was humble, polite, and a dedicated professional. If you said be there at 9, he was there at 8:55, and he stayed behind training afterwards, did extra work. He helped the local Indian players all the time. It was a real pleasure to work with, and a magnificent player. He had vision, but also he had pace. I worked with him when he was 35. I'd love to have worked with him when he was 25. He must have been on a different planet then.
Elano, Nicolas Anelka, Del Piero, James, Capdevila, Ljungberg, Peter, Trezeguet are also taking about a player with an impressive career.
Yeah, some of the players who came, some took it, I think, in the wrong manner. They just took it for to get some money and stay a few months and go. But others, and for example, Perez, he was superb. He usually only played 60 minutes, but he gave you everything in those 60 minutes. Ilano, again, he played 90 minutes and he was a superb player. And there was also a number of good South American players, not from Brazil or Argentina, but from some of the smaller nations. And they really did well. Impressive players they were. So it was a good league. I think it's gone down a little bit now. There's less money involved because the money attracted the big stars. Del Piero, again, class player. But some of the others possibly didn't use it for the right reasons. They use it purely for financial reasons.
In 2015, you were appointed as the technical director of the Lao Football Federation and as the coach of the national team heading to Russia 2018. What surprised about you, this team, and the country in general?
I'd received a number of offers from clubs which were financially quite good, but the appealing thing about going to Laos was the fact that I was able to coach a national team in the World Cup, which is something I'd always dreamt of. I knew we weren't going to win it, but at least I knew we were going to play in the World Cup, which I felt was quite an achievement. We played against Korea, where we were totally outclassed, but it was a magnificent game for us. Son Heung-min played, Key, who was there, so there was 2 EPL players, there was 5 from the Bundesliga, and our boys were basically all amateur. The country, lovely people, corrupt as hell, the whole country, the police, the politicians, but genuinely nice people. But the sad thing was, after the World Cup, 4 on my side were banned for life for match fixing. Really sad because 2, I felt, yes, I knew they were doing it, but I couldn't think about it because they were certainly by far in the best 11. But 2 others, I would have put my house saying that, no, these boys were innocent. And I still think they're innocent. One's still in contact with me, and he is saying he was set up by the bad people, shall we say.
It was recently announced that you are joining the project of the Marshall Islands team as a global ambassador. How do you see this project in the future?
Well, the Marshall Islands ambassadorship is quite a new thing for me. I've never done this type of role before. Basically, I responded to some contacts from Justin and Lloyd, who are trying to make sure that Marshall Islands actually have a national football team, because every single nation in the world deserves a national football team. So why not Marshall Islands? There's people there who love the game. Let them go on the stage. It gives great national pride. It gives something for the kids to achieve to, and it helps grow the game, which to me is the most important thing. If you can grow football, you're doing a good job. What it actually entails, we're doing it step by step. But the major aim is to get into a confederation, probably Oceania, possibly AFC, and make sure we get a game in the World Cup qualifiers again. It'll be way down the beginning, but you've got to start somewhere.
How do you think factors such as culture and religion influence when working outside your country?
In my book, which was called The Itinerant Coach, I used the phrase "be like bamboo." And what I mean by that is when you're working abroad, you're a guest. So what you think is right isn't always right. What happens in Venezuela might not happen in England, might not happen in Botswana, might not happen in Malaysia. So the factors such as the culture, the religions, the weather, all these things you have to adapt to. So you've got to bend a little bit. Don't break, because that would be things like letting the president choose the team or match fixing, but bend a little bit and realize sometimes you're not going to win every battle. My star striker in Malaysia, he rang up and said, I can't come training, coach. I said, why? He says, my mum says I've got to go shopping with her. Which I said, you're an international footballer. She said, coach, you can drop me, you can find me. But if my mum says I've got to take her, I have to do it. And I realised later I was never going to win. So what was the point? He played at the weekend, scored a couple of goals. Everyone was happy. So you have to learn to adapt to the culture. Culture of a nation is so important.
If you had to give advice to young people who are just starting out in the sport, what would it be?
To any young player, young footballer, I'd say, firstly, you've got to love the game. If you don't love the game, you're not going to be a pro, not going to be professional and make it to the top. You might lose the love of the game when you are playing at the highest level. That does happen. I've seen players who don't like playing football at international level or Premier League level. They just see it as a job. But to get to that stage, they had to love it. Other thing is work hard. No matter what people say, you can have talent. There's lots of talented people in this world, but the ones that make it are the ones that have talent and work extra hard. So, when you think someone is sitting down having a rest or having a beer or a cigarette, don't. Get out training instead. It'll pay off in the long term. In terms of coaching, I always tell younger coaches the main thing is better to die on your feet than live on your knees. In other words, if you're going to get sacked, and you're going to get sacked no matter what, you're either going to leave the job or you're going to be sacked, then leave on your terms. That means you're going to be judged by your results. The most important thing in professional football is winning. So that's the important thing. You've got to win. The youth coaching is very much different. Youth coaching is about developing a player, but professional football is about winning. Don't forget that.
Well, with this, we close the interview. Thanks, Coach Darby, for the time and for the talk. It's time to invite them to follow what's coming in the channel and subscribe. Thanks.